I wanted to look at stress and the gut. We just barely mentioned the beginning of this podcast, but millions and millions of people live with chronic or acute stress or both. Most Americans are suffering from moderate to high stress. I read a study that said that 44% of Americans are reporting that their stress levels have increased over the past 3 years. We could guess that, but that's a really high percentage. And a American Psychological Association survey found that the generation from 18 to 33 is the country's most stressed generation, right? Like it's bubbling up, and you're probably seeing it with your daughter and your daughter's generation. And there's just so much more stress than I feel like there used to be when I was growing up anyway. And I want to understand the connection between the gut, stress affecting immunity, and even the ability to fight viruses, which is part of our immunity. I have a good friend who's from LA who lives in New Zealand. And after the pandemic, as we know, New Zealand was completely shut down for 2 years. She finally got a flight back to LA to visit her dad, who was aging. And she wanted to make sure that she got on that flight, and she did not want to test positive, like the night before. So she had not gotten the virus, the COVID-19, the whole couple of years. And so she went to the extreme of having 2 people, not 1, but 2 with active COVID-19 spit in her water bottle and drink it 2 weeks before she left, so that if she was going to get the virus, it would move through. She didn't get it. She even then came to America. She's with her husband. He got the virus, and she was locked in a hotel room with him for about a week. He was very sick, didn't get it. Goes back to New Zealand, goes through a incredibly stressful period of time with her business, gets COVID. And is very sick and is still fighting. And that story to me is just like, oh my heavens, what is going on, right? What with our ability to fight or not fight, depending on the stress in our lives. I mean, it's huge, we know, but that really kind of shines a light on how much stress affects really every function of our body.
That's an incredible story. And I will say, I think terrible idea to have somebody with COVID spit in your water bottle.
Yes, not suggesting that, just telling you the story.
Really. I was just picturing that. Yeah. So here's the thing. We have known for a long time, we have classic studies from Carnegie Mellon University showing that when you take volunteers who are stressed, and this is true for sleep deprivation also, and you expose them to different form of coronavirus, this is well before COVID, the ones who report being stressed and or sleep deprived are much more likely to actually become sick. So one of the most important things for people to realize is that exposure does not necessarily equal infection. And your friend Dotsie so beautifully demonstrates that, right? And then infection does not necessarily equal debilitating illness or death, etc. There are degrees of that. And all of these different factors go into our resilience and susceptibility, etc. So we've talked about a lot of them: stomach acid, gut lining, microbes, immune system. Let's talk about stress. Stress can increase levels of pathogenic bacteria 1,000-fold within an hour, based on those hormonal, the cortisol and the adrenaline and the noradrenaline coursing through our bodies can affect our microbiome dramatically. We talked about leaky gut earlier, increased intestinal permeability. We know that stress is a risk factor for that. It can literally increase the holes in your fishing net. There's a marvelous study from researchers at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where they looked at men with HIV, and they found that those who reported chronic unmitigated stress. It's not the stress itself. They were looking at whether these men had a mindfulness practice or something to battle the stress. And they found that people who really did not have any mechanism for handling their stress, their HIV progressed 4 times faster.
Wow.
You think about latent viral infections like shingles. So shingles is varicella zoster. It's a chickenpox virus, latent. And we can get these lesions, very painful lesions. Who gets shingles? People who are stressed. Who gets mono? People who are stressed, people who are sleep deprived. So sleep is our body's way of sort of rebooting our system. And we know that T cells, in terms of being able to activate T cells and, get them to work for us, for our immune system to mount an immune response, we know that sleep deprivation dramatically affects that. We know that sleep deprivation in the 2 days before the vaccine, and this is true for influenza, for hepatitis, and for COVID vaccines, we can see up to a 50% decrease in vaccine efficacy if you are sleep deprived in the 2 days before you get it. You can't mount an immune response. We know from an article in the British Medical Journal last year that chronic sleep deprivation, less than 6 hours a night, was associated with a whopping 88% increase in likelihood of coming down with COVID. We know in every study looking at outcome from COVID that people who report more anxiety, more stress, have worse outcomes. So this stuff isn't just in our head, it's in our bodies, it's in our immune system, it's in our gut, and it's really pervasive, and it makes us a lot more susceptible and a lot sicker.